Coming up on episode 343 of Wheel Bearings, we've got the Toyota Prius, Mercedes-AMG EQE SUV, Buick Envista, Hyundai Palisade, first drives of the Hyundai Santa Fe, the Ford Ranger and Ranger Raptor. Infiniti is launching a new QX80. Kia's got the new K4 or small sedan. Nissan's got an all-new Kicks for 2025. And GM stops sharing its data. All that and more coming up next. This is episode 343 of Wheel Bearings. I am Sam Salmon from Guidehouse Insights.
And I am Nicole Wakeland from Carbuzz.
And this is quite an exceptional week because after 4 years, I've finally managed to get COVID.
Yes, I can hear you have a little stuffiness. I was sick last week. It was not COVID. Last week was just because I keep checking to see when I'm going to get it. So far, knock on wood, my little desk, I have not. How are you hanging in there, Sam?
I'm doing all right. It's basically, for me right now, it's just like, kind of a bad cold, stuffy nose, a little bit of sore throat, cough. So, I'll be using the cough button on a fairly regular basis today, I think.
Okay.
But
hopefully it's nothing more than just feeling like a crappy cold and that you're doing okay. Sorry, you're under the weather.
Yeah. So there's that. And then Robbie is off snowboarding today somewhere on a mountain with lots of snow. Yes. So it's just the two of us today. So
and we had to, it's really all my fault again, because I had to shuffle around, excuse me, tomorrow. We normally record on Sundays and it's actually Saturday afternoon because tomorrow, Sunday, I am going out to Moab, Utah to go attend Easter Jeep Safari for the first time ever.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited, but that means I'm going to be on a plane, so I couldn't exactly be doing wheel bearings.
Have they got anything interesting that they're going to be showing this year, that at least that you could talk about yet?
I don't know. When does the show go live? And I'll tell you.
Well, when's the embargo?
The embargo is Monday morning at 12:01 a.m.
I can make this publish at 12:02 a.m. on Monday.
Okay. So then, they've got 4 Easter Jeep Safari. They've got 4 concept. There's 2 Wranglers and there's a Gladiator and there's a Grand Wagoneer that they have. They look fantastic. Last year, I think they had 7. So fewer concepts this year than last year. But they all look really cool. I mean, the fun thing about their concepts are that they take real existing Jeep vehicles and then modify the daylights out of them to make them bonkers and over the top. In this case, all of them now have, they've got lifts that make them even larger. They've got stupidly large wheels on them. They did all sorts of cool interiors. And I think my 2 favorite things, they have one that's called the Lowdown, I believe. And it is a Wrangler 392 and it's in this poison apple red. It's this fantastic red, but they have what they call a bikini top. It's like this red top, but it's kind of see-through.
Yeah, those are it's like a sort of a minimalist soft top.
Yeah.
So it's more like a canopy that you clip on there. Yeah.
It's not really like a roof, but it's red. So it's funny, in all the media pictures they gave us ahead of time, the person driving, in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, you're turning violet.
Mm-hmm.
The driver turns red.
Looks red because of the sun coming through there.
At first, I'm like, why did they make your face red? I went, oh, they didn't. The little bikini top thing did. So I like that one. And I also they had the Grand Wagoneer that they modified. They call it the Vacationeer. And they've kind of made it campery. And they put this fancy skyloft thing on the roof of this. And think, when you have the little roof tent that'll sleep 2 people. But this one is climate controlled. And they didn't specify, but it looks for all the world like it has solar panels on it, like on the top of it. But to make that all work and access and everything, they ripped out the back 2 rows out of the Grand Wagoneer. So it's this big open space, but you have this on the top. It's this this sort of funky green. I think it's called spearminted, I believe was the kind of green that they called it. And do you remember the old Wagoneer had that very large faux wood grain paneling that ran? I think it was fake. I always assumed it's fake.
It was fake.
I never thought they had it, but it was wide. Like, say the panel that went across, it was a wide panel that went across. Well, sort of a nod to that. There's like pinstripe size. Maybe it looks like it's maybe an inch in the pictures of wood paneling that goes around like they did it. I'm like, yay for the wood paneling. And inside there is a designer. He's a fashion designer. His name has just escaped me, but he actually is a very big Jeep fan and has Grand Wagoneers, and he did the interior treatments, and it's this fancy, funky plaid fabric. And you think, oh, cute plaid. But when you look really close in the little squares, there's all these vintage Jeeps. Like it's a vintage Jeep pattern. So yeah, so it's kind of fun. And so I haven't seen them yet. I'll see them by the time this goes live. I will be about to see them. So I'm excited. It should be fun.
So is this sort of an overlanding rig then?
Yeah, they're all of them are, especially the vacation area. It's intended as an overlander because it has that skyloft roof on top. So it's definitely intended to be something you could take out there and you could camp in. And they put all sorts of cute little campy stuff in it. There's like a matching pillow that matches the fabric. And they did stuff. They've given it, it's modified. I mean, these are concepts. No one's ever going to own this. They're never going to make exactly this. So you can go out there, but
you never know. I mean, somebody might get inspired and build their own.
That's what this does. So they have the Jeep Performance parts, which is a part of Mopar. And a lot of the parts that are on this are Jeep Performance parts. So there's no saying like some of them, and I don't know the details on which, like, can you get this thing? Can you get that thing? They did all this stuff. That's who they worked with to do all this weird, fancy, fun stuff. So yeah, there's a chance you could get some of this stuff on your vehicle. Would you be able to buy a, actual vacationeer the way they have made it? Nope. But could you kind of turn your Grand Wagoneer into that? If you had the time and money, you probably could.
Cool.
So
all right.
It'd be fun.
So what have you been driving since we last spoke?
So I've had two vehicles because I missed a week. The first one is the Hyundai Palisade, which is three-row SUV. There's like 6 trims. The base trim is about $36K. You go all the way up to the Calligraphy Night Edition, which is $54,000, which $54,000 for a really well-equipped three-row SUV is not outrageous at all. It's reasonably priced. Hyundai's always done a good job of giving you I don't want to say they're luxury cars because luxury cars take it up a notch further, but luxury-ish interior in those top trim levels and still giving it to you at a price that you don't have to remortgage your house, which you wouldn't want to do right now anyway because the interest rates are too high, but you wouldn't have to. You can get this for $54K without the remortgage. It comes with front wheel or all-wheel drive. There's just one engine. It's a 3.8 liter, 6-cylinder, 291 horsepower, 262 pound-feet of torque, and an 8-speed auto. It's not like an overly aggressive, overly responsive engine. This is not a sports car. This is a 3-row SUV. But I feel like what you need an engine in a car like this, where it's something that you have your whole family in and you're doing road trips, it needs to have enough power to get you up to speed without feeling like you're going to get rear-ended by the guy coming up fast on the highway. And it needs to be sort of reserved. Like it needs that power, but it can't be this aggressive, loud, angry engine because that's not who's buying this. This is a family vehicle. You got your kids in there. You got your spouse in there with you who's sound asleep as you're driving on the family road trip. You want it to be nice and well-mannered. And I feel like that's what this does. It's a nice, well-mannered engine.
So what you're saying is it shouldn't sound like a Dodge Durango Hellcat. Correct.
Okay. If you want a Hellcat, you go buy a Hellcat. If you don't want a Hellcat, a Dodge Durango Hellcat, you buy something like the Palisade. If they made one of these and I know Hellcat's a different company and everything, but if they did a really powerful engine in this, then have at it. Like if you know what you're getting, like I am buying the Hellcat version of the engine from Hyundai. I want it to sound that way. Fine. Otherwise, you want the mild-mannered, reserved, does the job, has enough power to do the job. And that's exactly what the Palisade does. Inside, there's like the trims go from a leatherette up to Napa leather. There's power seats, heated and ventilated front and second rows available. There's all the bells and whistles and all the sort of comfort features that you want. And also, I like the cup holders. You've seen these cup holders. Like a rectangle, and there's 2 little circles in the bottom of the rectangle, which is where you put your cup, but there's no thing to hold it in. Imagine just a rectangle with 2 little circles on one side.
But then you press a little button.
You press a little button and like
magic happens.
Yeah, a little like curved piece comes out and it grabs your cup. So it holds your cup in place, which is nice because if you have a drink and you want it to hold your drink, cool. If you want to toss something bigger in there, you have your wallet, you don't have a drink, whatever, you can just push it back with your hand. So it's a small thing, and the small things are what make cars more fun. It would make it easier to live with. I thought that was a nice feature, super small feature, not a huge feature, but man, is it cool. And although Russ was like, push the button, click it back, push the button, click it back, push the button, click it back. I'm
like a little boy.
Yeah, I'm like, what are you, 12? Like, stop. So, and it has, the second row, nice, comfy second row. Third row, it's a typical third row in an SUV. I mean, you can put two, you can put adults back there. You're not really gonna want to sit back there for long. But it is, you can get to that back row, that third row pretty easily. It is relatively comfortable, and it does, I think, really what third rows generally do, which is serve you in a pinch. You're carpooling with an extra family. You have room for extra kids. You want to take all your friends together at once to go to something. Your friends can sit there for long enough for you to get to dinner, or the movie, or the concert, or whatever you're going to. So I like the Hyundai Palisade. I think it's a good vehicle, and I think the pricing on it is good.
Cool. And how much was the one that you had? That you had the calligraphy?
I had the calligraphy, and that goes up to and I didn't have a Monroney, so the calligraphy's 54,000. So that's about where mine would have been. So it's $54,000, which again is not nothing. That's some money. But when you're getting a 3-row SUV that's really well equipped, it's beautiful. It feels like more than 54,000. And I say that about almost every trim level of whatever Hyundai I'm in. It tends to feel like whatever the price is, it feels like it should be at least a couple $1,000s more than what it actually is priced, which is a nice thing.
Cool. And what else did you have?
So I also had the Buick Envista, which I am a big fan of, although it's kind of people love the Envista and hate the Envista. Have you driven it, Sam?
I've driven it, and I wouldn't say that I love it, but I really liked it, and particularly when you consider the price point, what you're getting, this is one of the most affordable vehicles from GM. I think overall, one of the most affordable vehicles in the market.
Yeah.
And, it's not super premium or luxury, but at the price point, it is really nice.
That's exactly it. So this starts at $23,495. $23,495 is not a lot for I guess I'd call it crossover.
Yeah. I mean, it's a hatchback, but
hatchback. Yeah. Crossover-y hatchback thing. That's a great price. If you go up to the top, which is the Avenir, there's only 3 trims: Preferred, Sport Touring, and Avenir. And the Avenir is actually Buick's sort of sub-brand, which is, it's still Buick. It's still a trim level, but they only stick that badge on the most premium version. It is and they like it to be sort of its own little thing. It's a big deal when they introduce the Avenir, and it gets fancy, like script everywhere that says that. And it's a little bit, it's the nicest version. I didn't even have that one. I have the Sport Touring, which is 25,000 and change, a little over 25. It has like the ST and like embroidered on the headrests of the front seats. It has nice trims. And again, it's not a super fancy car inside. It's not something that you look at and you're like, okay, wow, I'm in a luxury car. You will never think that. But it is nice, again, for the price. So where people get a little bit not so happy with it is on the powertrain. So it has a 1.2 liter turbocharged. I just lost my note with how many cylinders this has.
3 cylinders.
3 cylinder. I was going to say 3, and I'm like, wait, now I'm drawing a blank. 3 cylinder. It's 137 horsepower and 162 pound-feet of torque. Those aren't huge numbers. They're pretty modest.
But this is also not a particularly big car. It's not that heavy. I mean, this is not a GM Ultium EV that weighs 5 tons.
Exactly. Well, and that is exactly the point, Sam. You're 100% right. This is not a great big car. And I think people get sort of stuck in the numbers sometimes for a car. They just look at the number and go, well, that's little. That's not enough power. How do you know? 137 horsepower on a Ford F-250, that would be a problem. 137 horsepower on the Buick Envista is not a problem. It's fine. It is responsive enough. It's relatively quiet unless you really mash the gas. If you really, really smash it down to accelerate hard, it will do that for you, but gets a little bit loud, lets you know that it's working hard. But otherwise, it's a pleasant car to drive. It handles really well. I really enjoyed driving it. I drove it back and forth to Boston a couple of times, handled beautifully. And I took it on a little just wandering, meandering through the country roads outside the house here. And it does really well. I like driving this. And on the outside, I had people complimenting me on this. So I literally chased down our postman the other day because I had a package that needed to go out and I didn't want to go down to the post office and he'd already come by. And I'm like in the car, I'm like, as we were going on, we're going to find the postman. He's still in the neighborhood. I'm like looking and I see him like, there he is. And I pull over and I'm like, I just want to take this prepaid package so I don't have to go to the post office. And he's like, nice car. What is that? Like the postman noticed the car. He thought it was really good looking. He's like, and he did that's a Buick. I'm like, yes, it is a Buick. And there are a couple other people that just were like, nice car. My kids thought it looked great on the outside. They had one big complaint. Rose was utterly horrified, I tell you, that there are no cup holders and there's no center armrest in the back.
There's no cup holders?
There's on the door, there's like little door like pockets, but there's no center armrest. There's no center armrest cup holders.
I had not noticed that. And
Rose did.
Yeah. Well, I guess I don't spend enough time in the back seat, I guess.
We got coffees. We got 4 coffees. Me and my husband and Rose were in the car. My younger daughter was not. So she's like, oh, what am I supposed to do with this? This is a travesty. She was very dramatic, a 20-year-old going, what is going on? So yeah, that was her, but literally one complaint. So when you think that cup holders aren't important, surprise. She's like, I would not buy this. Like, if that's what your deal breaker is, okay.
Well, but consider it from this perspective. Mm-hmm. If you're the one buying it, you're probably going to be in the front seat where you do have cup holders. Mm-hmm. So who cares about the people in the back?
They can just suffer.
Yeah, they can hold their own coffee.
They can just deal with it. They'll just have to deal with not having a place to put their coffees. But otherwise, I mean, it's a nice interior. It's not like I said, not a super fancy interior. It does have up front, they have, there's an 11-inch touchscreen. So the way they have the infotainment, it does give it a nice little high-tech vibe. Sometimes when you get more affordable cars, they stick these, it just feels like you stuck a screen on the dashboard. Like, let's get some tape and stick it here. And they just kind of put it there. This does look cohesive and it does give it a little bit more premium since it's not the fanciest of vehicles and more affordable vehicle. And overall, I like it. I thought it was I think it's a good choice. I would recommend this to someone. I feel like it's a good starter car if you're looking for something that has a little versatility because the hatchback, it's not super expensive, or it's a good on the other end of it. I don't need a big car anymore. I want something that's still pretty affordable. I want something that looks good. I don't need to be carrying around tons of cargo and tons of people, and I don't want to break the bank. Buick Envista. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, that interior, you've got that 11-inch touchscreen and then a digital instrument cluster, and it's in like one long curved panel, all behind a single sheet of glass. So it does have that more premium look like you'd find in cars that are a lot more expensive than this. Mm-hmm. And one other feature that this car does lack that I think is actually a real plus, there's no CVT.
Yes.
It's a 6-speed automatic transmission.
That's a good thing for it to be missing. It's like, thank you for not putting a CVT, which is kind of surprising. There's a 6-speed automatic in this. And I feel like when they're just like, let's just make it cheap and easy, they toss a CVT in there. Thank you, Buick, for not doing that. Although, I had one person, here's a funny story telling you that you need to, marketing thing. I went to pick up a cookie at Crumble. Mm-hmm. I know you guys are shocked. It was chilly, so I didn't want to get out of the car. So I had to do the little curbside thing. And you have to put in what kind of car you have so they know where to find you, right? So I don't. Of
course, I had no idea. They're looking around. What the hell is a Buick Envista?
No, not even a Buick Envista. I didn't even put Envista. I put gray Buick SUV or something, or gray Buick, I think is what I put in. She didn't know what Buick was. She was talking to her colleague and she came and she's like, I'm so sorry. I didn't even know. I looked at her, I was like, Buick? What's a Buick? She literally had never heard of Buick in her entire life. And I'm laughing. She's like, how do you say it? I said, it's a Buick. And I couldn't. I'm like, Buick?
We'll have to share that story with Buick marketers next time we see them.
Oh, gosh. I was cringing. And she wasn't a super, I don't know. She's maybe in her mid-20s, and I thought she doesn't even know it exists. Not even couldn't identify the car. I don't even know what that brand is. Oh, a little scary.
That's kind of sad.
Mm-hmm.
One other thing that the Envista does not offer that
Yes.
may or may not be a deal breaker for some people. You can't get it with all-wheel drive. It's front-wheel
Yeah.
drive only.
But and which I know that's a deal, and that is a deal breaker for a lot of people, but I still believe that even if you really want a vehicle and it's only front wheel drive, get yourself some winter tires and you're
Mhm.
going to take care of I'd almost, if I had
You'll
to
be
pick
better
one
off than the
together,
person with the all-wheel drive version
right?
with all-season tires. Yes.
Exactly. Like if I had to pick between all seasons on a all-wheel drive vehicle or just putting winters on a front-wheel drive, winters on a front-wheel drive all day because they make such a difference. So if you really like this and you really want to be able, like, okay, everything's right about this, but I didn't want front-wheel drive, I think doing a pair of winter tires will serve you well.
Yeah. No, I really like the Envista, and if you're, for example, if you just got yourself your first big job out of college, you're making some reasonable money, you want to buy yourself a new car, your first new car, and you want something that doesn't look, cheap down market, but is still going to be affordable. Something like the Envista is, I think, a really good option because it does have a fairly premium look to it. I mean, you sit in it, you look close. It's obviously not a luxury car,
Mm-hmm.
but it looks surprisingly premium,
Yeah.
especially for the price point.
Well, and on the outside, if you're worried that it's going to look just like to people like at the office or whatever, like you skimped on a vehicle, on the outside, it's actually really slick. The
Hmm.
front end it has a very sports car vibe to it. It's beautifully designed, even the back, but it definitely has some presence. It's a really pretty car. It's a beautiful car. So, it definitely worth, if it's not on your list, if you haven't driven a Buick lately, uh, try driving one.
Cool. Did you know you can support Wheel Bearings directly? Head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia and you can become a patron today. Your contributions will help fund the platforms and tools we use to bring the podcast to you. And exclusives and improvements are already on the way thanks to your generosity. So if you want to be part of an automotive podcast like no other, head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia. All right. Well, I also had a couple of cars that I drove over the past week. First was the 2024 Toyota Prius Limited all-wheel drive.
No.
So this is the the highest of high-end non-plug-in Priuses that you can get today. Um, the Prius last year was completely redesigned, and for the first time, it doesn't look. I don't want to offend anyone,
Oh, you will. Go ahead,
of the
offend
nerd
everybody.
persuasion, but it doesn't look dorky. It doesn't look goofy. It's not ugly. It's actually quite a pretty car. It's very slick looking. And the way I've described it, especially after I drove the Prime last year, was that if the Chevy Volt had not been canceled and had continued to evolve,
Mm,
I think this is something like what the Volt, particularly the Prime, the plug-in hybrid version, is something like what the Volt, a third generation Volt, would have evolved into. So this is, it's a little bit lower profile than previous generations of the Prius. The roof line's a little sleeker looking. It doesn't have some of the weird shapes that we had, particularly on the last generation Prius. It's a really attractive car.
mhm.
Um, and so I had the standard hybrid version, but with all-wheel drive, which means that it gets a little extra electric motor on the rear axle for on-demand all-wheel drive when you need a little extra traction in low traction conditions. Um, and the limited is the top trim level. They have LE, XLE, and limited. So the one I had was the limited with all-wheel drive. And getting the limited means you get a bunch of additional features in there, like a fixed glass roof. You get this what Toyota calls their Softex trimmed, heated and ventilated front seats. So that's their version of vinyl.
I
Synthetic.
love I love that
synthetic
no one
leather
can
like
say
material.
that. No one can say vinyl or synthetic leather. It has to be like soft text. They give it a pretty
Well, I
name.
mean,
They don't
everybody's got
infringe it.
branding,
Yeah, they
but
all have branding. Just because saying vinyl, I think too many of us have that memory of vinyl seats of old. We're like, oh, I don't want that.
and you know, a lot of automakers are calling this stuff vegan leather,
Yes,
because it didn't
love
come
that
from a
one.
cow,
That's
you
one of my
know,
favorites. I'm like
which
vegan
is
leather.
it's not, I mean, when you consider what actually goes into this stuff, not necessarily environmentally more
Like,
appealing than
that's a good
leather.
question. Is it actually any better, or is it truly just a different set of environmental
It's a
concerns?
different set of trade-offs.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
so
mean, if you're opposed to to killing animals for meat
sure.
and hides, then
Right.
yeah, I mean it's a benefit. And I mean, even from an environmental perspective, compared to raising livestock, is making stuff from crude oil better? I mean, livestock, especially cows, give off a lot of methane in the atmosphere. So it's probably about a wash overall. It's
Yeah.
probably neither better or worse. But at any rate, it's a nice material. It feels like, I mean, it's not going to feel like really high end leathers, but it feels nice and easy to clean and all that stuff. Um, so, as with all, current new Toyotas, it's got the Safety Sense 3.0 system with pre-collision assist, front and rear parking assist. So it's got uh, short-range radar sensors in both in all four corners. It's got safe exit assist. So, if you're parallel parking on a street and the radar sensors detect a car or a cyclist coming up from behind you on the driver's side, it will give you an alert before you open the door, things like that. Blind spot monitors, cross traffic alert. This one had heads up display. Um, it's got the latest Toyota infotainment system, which is a very good system overall. And it's got wireless support for CarPlay and Android Auto. JBL 8 speakers sound system. It's not a concert hall, but it's fine. Um, 6 USB-C ports scattered around the car, which is not bad for a 5-seater. So everybody can plug in their stuff. There's a Qi wireless charging slot, which is in the center console. Just on the passenger side. So there's a slot, and you can drop your phone in there. And there's like a lot of times in cup holders, they've got these sort of pillowy rubber parts. So it's got that in there. So you drop your phone in there, and it holds it in place, so it's not sliding around. It's going to stay in contact with the charging pad, so it'll still charge. So that works quite nicely. Options that were on the car that I had were the advanced technology package, which includes a panoramic view monitor and advanced park. Um, you know, that I would probably take a pass on that. That's $1,085. Um,
Lot.
but so that's got, your 360-degree camera view and a bunch of other stuff. Although okay, so the digital rear view mirror, the camera mirror, that is a separate standalone option for $200. That's absolutely worth going for that option.
I love those.
Yeah.
I think
Uh,
they're a great feature.
yeah. Heated rear seats, $350. Carpeted floor mats for $300. Door sill protectors, $250. Probably go without that. Rear bumper applique, mud guards, dash cam for $150. If you want that, that's fine. Um, so, the new Prius, the current generation Prius, is quite a bit more powerful than prior generations. It's a grand total of, let's see, the front wheel drive versions, 194 net horsepower combined between the engine. So you got 150 horsepower, 2-liter 4-cylinder, which is up from the old 1.8 liter. And with the electric motor, you got a combined 194 horsepower blended. If you get the all-wheel drive, that bumps up you get an extra 2 horsepower to compensate for the added weight. Um, the the limited all-wheel drive, the XLE and LE come on 17-inch wheels. The limited rides on 19s. the XLE and Limited all-wheel drive are EPA rated at 49 city, 50 highway, 49 combined. This is one of the few times when I've actually fallen short
Oh,
of
really?
the numbers, on a Prius or or other similar Toyota hybrids. I only averaged about 41. I wasn't driving particularly aggressive. Now, a lot of the miles I put on were highway miles, but since they rated at 50, you know, so I'm not, it was on the colder side, so that has some impact. And uh, it's hard to say why it didn't do great. Still, 41 miles per gallon is really, really good. And you can't
That's
really
not
complain
bad.
about that. The Prius, the base front wheel drive LE starts at 27,950, so $28,000. The limited all wheel drive starts at $36,365. Um, and the one that I had with the assorted options came to a grand total of $39,938. So basically $40,000, which seems like kind of a lot, for especially, for a non-plug-in Prius. It is better looking than the old one. Uh, but I think if I was buying a Prius, especially a non, not a prime, um, I would probably opt for like the front wheel drive XLE, the mid-grade front wheel drive model, which is like just over $31,000. I think at 40, you're starting to kind of push it. This new Prius is not as roomy as the old ones. It particularly the back seat is tighter to get into because of the way the roof line slopes. You do have to duck your head down quite a bit to get in and out without bonking your head on the
How
door
tall are
opening.
you, Sam?
I'm 5'10".
Oh, yeah. So tall, but not like a 6 foot guy. You have to duck. Okay.
Yeah, so you do have to duck quite a bit to get into that back seat, which you'll want to take that into consideration if you do plan to carry four passengers on a regular basis. If that's the case, if this is just if you're single or you're just a couple and you're only occasionally going to carry backseat passengers, it's fine. But if you are regularly planning to carry four people, and use that back seat, if you've got young kids, or teenage kids, whatever, I would probably actually opt for the Corolla hybrid, which is similar in overall size, but feels it's a lot roomier and a lot better ingress and egress, for getting in and out.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's actually a little bit cheaper than the Prius. Um, the other thing, about this new Prius, I think we've talked about before, it has the same sort of instrument cluster setup as the BZ4X. So, unlike all previous generations of Prius that had this long, narrow strip across the top center of the dashboard with all the stuff in there, that was off away from your line of sight, this new Prius, has a digital cluster directly in front of the driver, and you have this like these plastic pieces that are kind of like a tunnel leading up to it and it sits on top of the dash, so it's above the steering wheel.
Mhm.
And if you're considering a Prius, you absolutely will want to actually sit in it, set the seat the way you want, set the steering wheel the way you want, and then turn it on and make sure that you can actually see that instrument cluster.
100%.
Because I think you had problems with the Prius
I had,
where it
yeah.
cuts it up, the top of the steering wheel cuts it off.
It's not like it blocks it so you can't sure like I don't have any idea what it says, but I adjusted the steering wheel, I adjusted my seat. I tried all different angles of attack to try to get it. And for me, I just could not get a spot where at least a little bit the steering wheel wasn't in some way blocking part of the instrument cluster. Again, it's not to the point where you're not getting information. You're like, oh God, I don't know how fast I'm going, or I can't see what's happening. But you sort of do that like slight tilt to the side to get the right view, which is not great. Like you don't want to do that. You want to be able to just be driving and look straight down, like glance down and see everything. I think that, like you said, Sam, it's going to depend very much on you. It's not even your height. It's just everything. Is your torso longer? So you're sitting higher than somebody else or whatever. But it's definitely worth sitting down and turning it on. Because if you just sit down and you look at it, you're like, yeah, this is fine. Then once you turn it on and you realize you can't see everything once it's on, may or may not be an issue, but it's definitely something worth checking.
Yeah, and again, it's going to vary a lot on your particular body proportions. And even though it's the same parts that are on the BZ4X, on the Prius, I don't have an issue with it, because of just the way everything lines up. So I can see
Right.
the entire cluster. On the BZ4X, the way everything is aligned, the bottom of the bottom half of the cluster does get obscured by the top of the steering wheel.
Yeah.
And this is, for cars that have this type of setup, Toyota should really maybe consider going to one of these more squared off steering wheels like the Nautilus has, like the
Yes.
Cybertruck has, where basically instead of flattening the bottom of the steering wheel, flatten the top of the steering wheel,
Right.
so it sits a little bit lower, so it's not sticking up in that area if you're going to put information there.
I would agree. And by the way, while we were chatting, I looked up the Corolla. The cheapest version of the Corolla in a hybrid form is 23.5.
Oh,
The
there you
top
go.
trim of the Corolla, the hybrid XLE, 27,250.
So that's cheaper than the base
Significant.
LE Prius.
Mhm.
So
And
yeah,
it gets its mileage, and I'm just reading from the site, 53.46.
yeah,
So
it's effectively the same fuel economy as a Prius. I think the label values for the Prius are a couple of miles per gallon higher because slightly better aero, but it's when you're getting into the upper 40s and 50s, a mile to 3 per gallon is not going to make any significant difference into how much
no.
you're spending on fuel.
And when you look at the cost different, I mean, it's not going to cost do much in fuel, but your car payment significantly difference with the price of a Corolla.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you need that extra backseat space, um, or you need to save a little money, go for the Corolla. If you want that extra bit of style and you don't need the backseat so much, go for the Prius. And the Prius does also have the advantage over the Corolla being a hatchback. So
Mhm.
you can fold the back seat down. Although in the all-wheel drive version, the rear cargo floor does sit up a little bit higher to give clearance for the rear electric motor and stuff. But still, it's a hatchback is always a very practical alternative.
Yeah, it does definitely. I mean, and it's funny if you don't have a hatchback or you've never driven one or sort of lived with one or knew anybody who had one, it makes a huge difference when it comes to cargo. And it doesn't mean that you have to be having like constantly carrying heavy stuff, but the least little bulky thing,
Hmm.
it's just slightly too long. Suddenly you can't put it in a trunk because you can't finagle it in there, even if you're trying to put it in an angle. Once you have a hatchback, suddenly it's so much easier to carry cargo. It makes a huge difference. So whether it's, just random stuff or you're bringing stuff home from, mulch that you would otherwise put into your pickup truck, it makes a big difference. So if you think you're going to have a little bit of cargo, that hatchback
Or
is
some
a big deal.
interesting piece of mid-century modern furniture that you found at a yard sale for
Exactly.
$5.
That random yard sale find you can't fit into a trunk, but you could fit it into your hatchback. Yep,
Yep.
absolutely.
All right. So that is the Prius Limited all-wheel drive. And then this week, I was also out in California for a few days for Nvidia GTC, which is their GPU technology conference. And while I was out there, I borrowed a Mercedes-AMG EQE SUV. So this is the high end of the EQE lineup right now. So this is all electric. It's a midsize 2-row crossover. The AMG obviously means it's also the high performance variant. Um, and in this case, it has 617 horsepower, 701 foot-pounds of torque, and it feels like it.
I bet.
This is one quick little beastie. And not so little either though. So this thing will go when you step on it. And since it's the AMG, it basically has most of the available options as standard equipment. Although there were still plenty of extra cost options on here as well. And I think the case of both the EQE and the EQS SUVs. I think most most people would probably agree that the SUV versions are somewhat more attractive than the sedans.
I would
Um,
concur.
yeah, I think most people are not particularly fond of the design of the EQE and EQS sedans, but the SUVs, they look pretty good. Um, and So, this has active ride control with active roll stabilization, uh, AC charging, 9.6 kilowatts, which is fine. It's not great. There's other a lot cheaper vehicles that charge faster at home, like, 11 or even 19 kilowatts in some cases. 170 kilowatt DC fast charging. Again, it's okay, but for a car this expensive, it's, could be better. But, Mercedes has an all new EV platform launching next year that's going to be underpinning a lot of new EVs that are coming, starting with the CLA next year. Um, there's adjustable regenerative braking with paddles on the steering wheel. So, if you're driving along, if you're in a situation where you maybe don't want so much regen, you just tap the right-hand paddle. If you want more regen, including, full one pedal braking, tap the left-hand paddle. It's got the AMG sound experience, which is you engage that through the different drive modes. So, you've got your normal eco, drive, sport. There's an off-road mode, which I'm not sure you would ever actually want to do with this particular vehicle with these
I would.
big wheels and really low profile tires,
Not a snowball's chance, but okay.
22-inch wheels,
Yeah.
and very low profile tires. But it's there. And then there's the sport and sport plus modes. And when you put it in sport, you start to hear more sound, synthetic sound. And when you put it in sport plus, you really hear the sound. It gets surprisingly loud and aggressive sounding. It's clearly a synthetic sound. They're not trying to replicate the sound of a big V8 engine or something or anything like that. And I didn't get to hear it really from outside, but even inside the car, you hear the difference when you're driving along.
Mhm.
Rear wheel steering, which is always handy with these EVs that tend to have longer wheelbases, easier to maneuver. It's got this one had the MBUX Hyperscreen, which is standard on the AMG. I think it's optional on the regular EQE SUVs. So this means you have one ginormous piece of glass that spans the entire dashboard. There's like a 17 or 18-inch center touchscreen. There's another display over on the passenger side, and then a digital instrument cluster in front of the driver. But they're all under a single giant sheet of glass. And this is the first time I've had a chance to actually try this out.
What'd you
Um,
think?
you know, it looks
Pause.
nice. You know, and if I was buying the AMG and it was standard equipment on there, fine. If I was getting the regular EQE, where the hyperscreen is not standard, I'm not sure that I'd pay extra for it.
Yeah.
But the thing that I was impressed with was the infotainment interface.
Mhm.
So they have what Mercedes calls their zero layer interface. So the base layer, instead of toggling back and forth a lot between different modes, which for example is what you need to do on the Toyota infotainment system. You can get the maps, or you can get media playback, or you can get vehicle settings. But only one of those appears on the screen at once at any one time.
Yeah, it's pretty
But
impressive. There's a lot to see there. It is, and
yeah,
I love how they've done it. It's a lot to take in. There's a moment where you're like, oh God.
yeah. But on the
But
hyperscreen, the screen is filled with the map, and then you have a bunch of widgets that float on top of that. So there's a media player widget that is there, and there's a couple of other widgets that just kind of float on top of the map. So you still have clear view of the map, and also with the heads up display that is in here, it also projects the map, your navigation map, that not just navigation prompts, not just turn left here, but actually the map itself is projected in the heads up display.
Mhm.
Um, not sure how useful that actually was. I think I would actually prefer to have like the augmented reality HUD system that they have on the S class, where it's a multi-plane heads-up display. So on that one, when you drive one of those, it actually shows the prompts appear to be floating, like when you have to turn, the arrows float over
Yeah.
the intersection where you're supposed to turn. As you approach it, they get bigger, and they kind of stay locked in place to that, or at least
Do you
appear
like
to.
that?
Yeah, I do like that because
Yeah.
it's like, hey, here's where you're supposed to turn. Okay, turn. Now's your turn. And I think that actually works better. The level of detail you get in the HUD, I think, is maybe a little bit overwhelming there. Um, and then you can also display that map information in the cluster as well. So you can actually have three maps simultaneously on there. But overall, I like the zero layer display concept. I think it works pretty well. Um, the rest of the design of the interior, aside from this giant slab of glass spanning the entire dashboard, I really like the design of the vents, especially the ones on the outer edges.
Are they physical vents? Do you have to mess
They are
around with
physical vents.
the
You can grab them and
Huzzah!
direct the airflow wherever you
Woohoo!
want. You don't
Yay.
you don't have to touch anything on the screen. You don't even have to look at it. You can reach out and grab the vent and direct the airflow and give it a twist, if you want to close it, or twist it the other way to open it. But the design of it, it looks like the front end of a jet engine on an aircraft.
It does.
I mean, it's a really cool design. I really like it.
It looks
Um, the seats in this thing were great. The back seat is very, very roomy. Lots of cargo space in the back. This thing's limited to a top speed of 149 miles an hour, which is more than anybody really needs. Um, the upholstery in this thing
That's all you
was was a mix of black MB-Tex, which is again Mercedes version of
vinyl.
not vinyl. Yes, microfibers with red stitching. It was bright red seat belts because it's
I
an AMG, of
love
course.
colored seatbelts.
Yeah,
Hear what the car is. The minute you make the seatbelt, so even if it's just like striping, I think BMW has one. They have one that has like BMW M stripes, like the blue and the red. I love it. Make a seatbelt a different color. I'm like, take my money. I'll buy your car.
yeah.
That's all it takes.
This one, the one I had the high performance carbon ceramic brake system, brake rotors and pads, which are an extra $5,450. The performance steering wheel with Napa leather and microfiber, $500. One thing about the steering wheel, I did feel like there were maybe a few too many controls on the steering wheel, and it's a mix of pressing and sliding your thumbs on there to do stuff. And I think if I had more time with it to get used to it, it'd probably be better. But it was a little bit confusing at first, trying to figure some of the stuff out.
I kind of feel like when they have like there's a it's one of those things they haven't figured out yet as designers. We want to put some stuff in the steering wheel so it's right at the tips of your fingers so that you can use it as you need to use it. You don't have to move your hand from the steering wheel. But it does get to be when there's so many controls on the steering wheel. And I know it'll become more intuitive the longer you own whatever car you own. But there is that like, okay, right hand up is this and left hand down is that. No, wait, is it left? Right? It is a lot to take in. And I do feel like it easily lends itself to confusion.
Yeah. And, while I am generally not a proponent of ever larger wheels, the 22-inch AMG multi-spoke turbine wheels do look fantastic on this thing. And they're $1,650 altogether. Bottom line price on this thing, base price on the AMG EQE, $109,300. Grand total on this one, $132,200.
Oof, that's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money.
You have the money. You can afford a $132,000 car. Would you spend it on this? Ooh,
Probably not.
No, why not?
It's just, I think an SUV style form factor is not really what I want.
Okay, that's fair.
But if I was looking for something in that form factor, very high performance, very, very luxury, it would certainly be on my consideration list.
Okay, fair
But for me personally, it would not be, this form factor is not my first choice. So put it that way.
enough. Okay.
And since this is, an AMG with big giant high performance tires on it, the range, not exceptional, 235 miles. Um, and it did fine during my time driving it. But obviously a vehicle like this is not going to be the most energy efficient EV you can get. But it's good. I think Mercedes is, since they launched the EQS, their first batch of EVs that they did, the original EQC that they were planning to launch in North America and then never did. They abandoned it. They saw it in Europe, but they never launched it here because its performance and its range, its efficiency they decided, yeah, it's not good enough for the U.S. market. Americans want longer driving range. And the regular versions of the EQE SUV, they approach 300 miles of driving range, and that's fine. That's more than adequate. Um, you know, for performance version like this, 235 miles is not out of line, for
Mhm.
something with this level of performance. Uh, and probably a competitor to this vehicle would be something like the Tesla Model X, which, even though its, rated range is over 300 miles, the reality is, in real world driving, gets closer to 250 miles. And, the Mercedes and most other EVs tend to get pretty close or even exceed their EPA label values. So the real world range of this versus a Model X, not going to be that different.
Mhm.
And, at the price point, although, Tesla's cut prices on the Model X and the Model S pretty substantially over the last year, due to slowing sales. But, when they first launched the Model X Plaid, uh, it was something like $140,000. And, this feels much more like a luxury vehicle than the Model X ever has.
I feel like, whatever your feelings on Tesla, they don't have that like luxury kind of thing going on. Mercedes has that
Yeah.
old school fancy. I mean, there is absolutely zero doubt in your mind that you're driving a luxury car when you look at that thing. There's no doubt. It's gorgeous.
Yeah. So, if you're looking for a high performance luxury electric SUV, the Mercedes-AMG EQE is something that should definitely be on your consideration list.
Mhm.
If you don't need quite as much performance, the regular EQE SUV is probably going to meet many more people's needs than I mean, I don't know how many people actually need a 600 horsepower midsize SUV.
Eh,
Uh, yeah, but it's
it's
there
not
if
that
that's what
need,
you
it's
want.
that want. Most of us don't need half the car we buy. We just
That's true.
want,
Yeah,
regardless of whether it's a $30,000 car or $130,000. We just buy it makes our hearts happy.
exactly. All right.
Yes.
So you also, between the two of us, we've driven a couple of new vehicles, done
We
first drives
have.
in the last couple of weeks.
Uh-huh.
Let's start with you, and what you drove in Tennessee.
So I went to Tennessee to drive the Hyundai Santa Fe, which is all new this year and very different. What do you think of how it looks?
Very different.
What about the exterior? What do you think? Fan or not a fan? Because it is bold, blocky, in your face. It is very aggressive.
I'm glad they did it. I want more interesting vehicles out there. I don't want everything to look the same.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, I wouldn't say I love it, but I absolutely do not hate it.
Okay, that's fair. So,
I think it's a really interesting design.
yeah.
And I think Hyundai overall has been doing a lot of interesting things with design over the last few years. Whether it's the Ioniq 5 and 6, the Santa Fe, even some of the stuff they were launching before, like the Tucson, Santa Cruz. I think they're on an interesting path.
I
Yeah.
agree. I think they're trying, and I appreciate they're trying, like you said, I appreciate them trying to do something different because it's very easy to just make small iterations from where you last were as a car company. Oh, let's change it a little bit. Let's make the bumper a little different. Let's change this little thing. Let's slightly, ever so slightly move things forward. But they didn't with this. They're like, hey, well, let's completely give us something that looks very unlike what other Hyundais look like, and let's go for it. And I think, I like it. I'm okay with it. I think it is a love it or hate it proposition. Funny enough, I was talking to someone earlier today who was looking at a 3-row SUV, and I said, "Are you looking at something new?" And they said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, what about the Hyundai?" She said, "I hate it." I'm like, okay. Well, all right. Check it
This
out.
person knew what the new Santa Fe looks
He
like.
knew with the new Santa Fe, they
Yeah.
have been literally looking and shopping online the last couple of weeks. And they said, I hate how it looks. I hate how it looks. I said, but anything, nope. But based on looks alone, they said no. Now, I kind of like that they went funky. I think neat lighting treatments give a car a lot of personality. And there's a light bar across the front, and then on either side, there's very clearly an H. But then, so not only is there an H, but the H's themselves stand as like the legs in the letter H with the straight bar. So if you look at the front, there's H lights, then the lights
Kind of
together.
like the nesting dolls of H's.
Yeah, they're like the nesting dolls of H's. Then underneath on the lower, below that, there's another H. You look in the back, the taillights. Guess what? An H. Like there's this very distinct, like we get it. H stands for Hyundai. We get it. We get it. We understand. I kind of like how it looks, but it is a very aggressive design choice. Some people think it looks very Defender.
Yeah, I mean, it does have a lot of Defender to it, and I think if Hyundai were building an SUV that was really meant to be a serious off-roader, to take on the likes of Bronco, Wrangler, 4Runner, I think that this is a design that if they had taken this design and applied it to a vehicle like that, absolutely perfect. I think they'd knock it out of the park.
Mm-hmm.
As a mainstream midsize crossover, well, I guess given that most of the people who buy those serious off-roaders never actually take them off-road anyway, maybe
Right?
not such a bad thing. That's all. Okay, it's fine. It's good.
It'll do it. It'll do it. And they do have that you have some capability in this now, but there is an off-road trim. I just drew a blank as I'm looking at my
XRT.
XRT. I had SRT, and I'm like, that's not the right
XRT.
SRT is totally the wrong direction.
Yeah.
XRT. And so when they did the drive, they had us driving all around Nashville, but then when we stopped for lunch, it was this really cool place that had this off-roading that you could do. And they had us take the XRT on, it was sort of like two little trails. There was one trail that was they kind of really wanted everyone to take. And then there was a secondary trail that they said, this one's a little bit slightly more technical. You don't have to do this if you're not comfortable. And absolutely, I did it. And the fun thing was my drive partner for this drive was Jill Simonillo. And both of us have done the Rebel Rally. And we're like, bring it. Let's go see what you've got. Like the two of us will bring you back your car in one piece. We want to see what we got. And to their credit, because we talked about this before the show, this time it was really an off-road. This was really actual off-roading. We had to, there were some steeper bits. It was nothing like, as technical as you'll get for something like you do something in a Land Rover. But it was genuinely, steep hills. You had a little bit of articulation happening. There was some loose rocks underneath and some tight turns, and it did admirably well. It did really, really well. I think it's very capable of taking on not heavy duty off-roading, but more modest off-roading. If you want to go a little bit past where you might go in the typical SUV, you can totally do it. I would have no problems with that. And it gives it extra ground clearance. There's about 1.3 extra inches on there, so that you have, and it's not your off-roader car, but if you want to do a little bit and you don't want to go all in, the XRT is actually good. And it was a genuine off-road course, unlike what they had us drive on the Palisade a few years ago, where we're like, I feel like a Camry could have handled this. Come on, Hyundai, this is not helping your cause. This time, it's like they heard us. They're like, we got you. We will give you an actual off-road course. So I like that it could really off-road. Inside, it's beautiful. It's really comfortable. Like I was saying about the Palisade, same idea. They give you a lot of content for a low price. One of the things that I liked about the front of it They have where you have the dual wireless charging pads where they sit in the center console. First of all, they're very low. Like they're low in the little center console. So there's like maybe, I don't know, like an inch and a half lip on either side of it. So if you take a sharp corner or you slam on the brakes or something, your phone doesn't go shooting off onto the floor at your feet. And just in general, the way the charging pads kind of sink in, like grab your phone, especially if your phone case has any kind of bumpity bit or something that's protecting, like on an iPhone where the
Like a
lenses
camera
are.
bump.
Yeah, the camera bump can be hard because the camera bump makes it not connect. It's raised up just a little bit, the little like square that you want to actually charge. So the camera bump does not interfere with your phone connecting, which is a good thing because the number of times my phone just won't sit in one of those charging pads and actually charge. Um, it happens a lot more often than you think. One of the big changes this year too is this is now standard with 3 rows. So depending on when you looked, there was a Santa Fe and a Santa Fe Sport and a Santa Fe XL, and one had 3 rows and one had 2 rows, and then there was no 3-row option, and it was only 2 rows. Super confusing if you look at the history of the Santa Fe. Now, Santa Fe, 3 rows standard. That's it. So they made it less confusing. 2 rows of seating in the back, or 2 rows, seating for two in the back. It's a pretty flat, seat. Still reasonably comfy, but again, like in the Palisade, it's a third row that you'll use now and then. It's not where you're going to want to take a really super duper long road trip. It's a comfortable, attractive car. I like what they did with it. The H patterns, even on the inside, like if you look at the backs of the seats, on the seat backs, there's a little pattern that just looks like a line with it's a line. It creates another H, so it's like long, or like a really long middle part with the feet on either side. So it's just H everywhere, H everywhere. I felt like it was an episode of Sesame Street, just a little bit.
Uh,
So that was kind of crazy. They have one really weird thing. You got to tell me because you now are dying of the plague, as we've established. Hopefully, not really dying of the plague, but you have COVID. This car was developed, or development was happening, started during COVID.
mhm.
They have, how a lot of trucks, especially, have the regular glove box and like a second little glove box up above it. The second little glove box, and this is not a glove box. It's a UVC sanitizing compartment, and it's got a slightly rubberized like surface, and so it'll hold things in place. Put your phone in there, put keys in there, you can put your sunglasses in there, and you push a button that's like on the center console, it lights up, and it takes 10 minutes and it sanitizes your stuff. Would you ever use that?
Probably not.
That's like, it feels like, oh, that's really cool. What could we
I
just
mean, unless my dogs have been, slobbering all over my phone,
okay.
I
So you found
I
a use
probably
case.
I probably wouldn't bother.
Yeah.
But,
So,
it makes sense. They were designing this in 2020, 2021. It's like
exactly.
it seemed like it would have been, and at that time, there were a lot of companies. You go on Amazon, there were a lot of companies selling,
Mhm.
phone, uh, like phone washers, phone,
Well, you could
basically little
buy like,
boxes that you could
yeah,
buy.
you could
There
buy a
was a
little box that you
UVC.
could plug in and stick on your counter or whatever, and
Yeah.
it literally to sanitize your phone.
And of course, at that time, we all thought that, COVID was transmitted through touch.
Mhm.
It turns out, it's almost entirely airborne rather
Right.
than because, you remember, we would have deliveries left on the front door and we would leave
Yes.
them outside there, and then go out and wipe everything down. And when they were delivering cars to us,
Yeah.
they rather than bringing the keys to the door, they would leave, they would put the car in the driveway, put the key above the visor. They would wipe everything down with,
Yeah.
antiseptic wipes. And then, when we were swapping cars the next week, we'd go put the key in the car. We would wipe everything down before the
Right.
guys arrived to pick up the car. And,
So it's of a moment where I'm thinking, okay, no one's gonna hate this feature, but I
yeah,
feel like
it doesn't hurt anything to have it there. And if you are a germaphobe, there are certainly things that do get transmitted by touch.
right.
And you know, COVID is not necessarily one of those, but it doesn't hurt. But I think if I recall correctly, that's the UVC thing is only on certain trims, right? It's not on every
I
trim.
believe it's trim specific. I don't have that in front of me, but yeah, I believe it's trim specific. So not everyone.
And you can just use it as just a regular storage compartment. You don't have to use the UVC.
Yeah, there's no rule that says you have to use the disinfectant. You just push the button to activate that. Don't push the button. And the other nod to its COVID era design, and this is actually really cool though. I'd use this all the time. On the backs of the front seats, there's a little hook on the right, like on each side of the back, like two little hooks.
This is your invitation.
They had originally said they wanted to do
electrified vehicle.
the idea. Hold on a second, Sam. Can you hear that?
Yeah, that came through. Was that something playing on your browser?
I don't. Why all of a sudden? That was so weird. Like I haven't changed anything. Some random thing. I'm so sorry. Some random thing.
No worries.
Trying to play. You're gonna edit that out, or
yeah, I'll leave it.
So there you go. That's what happens.
Make it more realistic.
Playing. I'm like, what the heck? I don't even know where it is. Like I have clicked nothing on my screen. Why is it suddenly playing?
Something electrified is trying to talk to you.
Something electrified. So they, in fact, I think I can see the ad now. No, I have no idea what it was. So anyway, on the backs of the front seats, there's two little hooks, one on each, on the backs, two on each seat. And they're little hooks. They originally put them there. You know how you had to find a place to put your mask? And their masks from their rear view mirror or whatever. The idea being that you could hook the ear loop from the mask, so you could have masks. You could hook your mask there.
Oh, okay.
Which is fine. And you're like, well, I'm not hooking a mask anywhere anymore. But it's great if you have like groceries or something small, or you want to put a purse back there, or even if you wanted like a little trash bag. This is a family car. You have kids. If you wanted to loop a little bag there, so your kids had someplace to toss in the trash, assuming your kids would actually do that, and
rather than just tossing it on the floor.
Toss it on the floor, all the Cheerios and random stuff. But so I thought that was a nice thing. So those are two things that were COVID era design choices that actually, one I think is really cool, and one I'm like, I don't know how much we'll use that, but okay.
Did you try out the handle on the C-pillar?
I did. Okay. So on the C-pillar, you don't see it when you look at it. It kind of just looks like a design. You push and there's a little panel that like pops inward, and it's a handhold. The idea with this handhold is that you should be able to grab this handhold so that when you go to step up to get something you've stored on the roof, like cargo up there, you have a better handle up. Like instead of having to awkwardly grab the roof.
This is directly above the rear tire.
It's so,
grab that, step up on the rear tire, and
so if you're standing in the spot with the rear door open, it's reach your left arm up or reach your arm up, and it's directly there. It's right there in the like behind that door, basically. Mm-hmm. It seems like a great idea, but I found that it was in the wrong spot. Like, when you reach up on something, like if you reach up to hike yourself up so you can get to the roof of the car, right? You kind of put your arm sort of straight up, right? Like pretty close to your head, and pull yourself up. So once you've pulled up, your arm is pretty close to your body, even once you've lifted yourself up. With this, my arm is out to the left. So when I go to pull up, but it's kind of a sideways up maneuver, it's not in the right spot. And I don't know if that would be different for someone who was taller, where your arm reaches better, so your elbow would still be kind of bent. Mine was too straight. So it's like you're trying to leverage the wrong way. It's not in the right spot. I wanted it to be closer to my body. It was too far away from my body. So I tried it, and I'm like, I don't know about this. And then I just reached up and grabbed the roof rail, and it was easier.
Oh, okay.
So, and Jill found the same thing. Now, Jill's very short. So again, it could be height thing. Jill's extreme. I don't know Jill's height. I don't even think Jill's.
I think she's like 4'11".
Yeah.
4'10" or 4'11".
It was the same thing. It's just not the right spot. I'd imagine if you're taller, the taller you are, the more bent your arm is going to be, because you have a greater reach, right? Mm. So it might make more sense. The shorter you are, the more straight your arm is sort of sticking out to the side, and it's not a great way to leverage up. It's nifty, though. It's a cool idea.
Okay. And, sometimes, these interesting ideas don't necessarily work out. But
it's not horrible. I don't hate it. I just thought, I bet I'm not.
It's one of those things that probably most people end up never using. And then, maybe when they do the mid-cycle refresh, they'll just say, okay, people aren't using that. We'll drop that, save a couple of bucks.
Maybe I'm the weirdo who thinks I'm the only one who doesn't think it's in the right spot.
I'll let you know when I get my hands on one.
There you go. I'll try it out. We really need to have Robbie tested. He's giant, and see if you're a giant, and then your arm isn't stretched out so far, your elbow's more.
But Robbie is such a giant that he doesn't even need to climb up. He can just get stuff out of the roof rack.
Over the roof.
Yeah. All right. What about the engines? Because there's two powertrain options, right? The 2.5 turbo.
You have a gas and you have a hybrid engine. The hybrid engine is coming a little bit later. That's a late arriving thing. The gas engine is here first. It's perfectly fine. It's responsive. It has more than enough power. It easily gets the car up to speed. There's no issues with that. It's not a sports car. It manages its own bulk really well. Again, I feel like I'm describing the Palisade again. Very similar to that, in that it is a responsive engine. It gets moving just fine. It is quiet. It is well mannered. And it is going to do exactly what you want to do. It gets decent fuel economy, but not outrageous fuel economy. Front wheel drive trims get a 29 highway, 20 city, which, okay. Hybrid trims take that to 36 city, 35 highway. So you do better in the hybrid. You take a little jump forward. The numbers drop slightly, relatively for all-wheel drive. But so if fuel economy is a priority, you're going to want to hold out, because you're going to get a little bit better fuel economy if you get that hybrid engine. And they've just said like late arriving. We don't know exactly when. If late arriving is tomorrow or months away. It was a little bit vague.
Okay. All right. Anything else on the new Santa Fe?
No, I think that just about covers it.
All right. Well, then let's jump over to Salt Lake City, where we drove the 2024 Ford Ranger.
Yeah.
So we get it was an interesting program, because when we arrived in Salt Lake, they took us from the airport to this restaurant up in the mountains somewhere above Salt Lake City, where we had lunch, got a presentation on the truck, and then we went for a drive in the regular standard Rangers. We did a towing demo, backing up with a trailer using.
How'd you do with that, Sam?
I did a lot better than I did with the Tacoma that they had on hand for comparison.
Same, but I stunk at both because I don't drive enough with the trailer.
Exactly.
Oh God, move the cones, gentlemen. I'm taking that one out.
Yeah. So, if you are not used to, if you've never tried to back up a vehicle with a trailer hooked up, it is an interesting experience. Up until a couple of years ago, most of the trailering I had done was moving forward, not moving backwards. But of course, sometimes you do have to move backwards. Moving forwards is pretty straightforward. You just got to, kind of keep track of where the trailer is, when you're going around corners. You make sure you don't take them too tight, things like that. And, to account for the fact that you may have anywhere from 2 to 20,000 pounds of additional weight behind you, and
you got to brake a little bit,
adjust your braking distances accordingly.
Yeah.
But backing up is a very different experience, because when you don't have a trailer, if you want to back up and have the vehicle go towards your left, you turn the steering wheel to the left. You turn the steering wheel in the direction you want the back end of the car to go. No problem. With a trailer, it's the exact opposite.
Yes.
So if you want the trailer to go to the right, you have to turn the steering wheel to the left, which is totally counterintuitive.
And if you don't do it all the time, even though that's what you're supposed to do, your brain is like, wait, what? No, wait, how? It's very hard to do.
Yes. And so what Ford did was they had a little course set up. They had Ranger and Tacoma running parallel. Basically, it was just like a little S course, so went back, went to the right, and then back to the left again, to try and kind of back into a space. And so they had the Tacoma for comparison, brand new one, the latest 2024 Tacoma.
Yes, they gave us a new one, the most current version. They weren't
which of course does not have anything like Pro Trailer Backup Assist feature. And then they had the Ranger with Pro Trailer Backup Assist, which is a feature that Ford has had on their full-size trucks and utilities for probably 4 or 5 years now.
Yeah, it's been a little bit. It's not new to the Ford. It's just new to this Ford.
Right. And so using that feature, when you set up your trailer, you put a sticker on the tongue of the trailer with a barcode on it, that your backup camera on the vehicle reads that. And then you can set up multiple. So if you have multiple trailers, if you have a horse trailer and you have a boat and, whatever, you have multiple trailers, you can program each one of them. You can put in the information about the the wheelbase, the length of the trailer, and so the vehicle knows where the axles of the trailer are.
Mm-hmm.
And then it uses that in its calculations. And then when you hook up the trailer, the camera reads that sticker with the barcode on it and pulls up the correct profile. You can also pull up the profile manually if you've got a trailer that you haven't pre-programmed. You can do that.
Right. You don't have
manually.
to program everything in. If you have a random trailer you're hooking up, no worries.
Yeah, I mean, if you're just going to U-Haul and renting a trailer for a move or something, you can do that. And then there's a knob. In the case of the Ranger, the knob is on the center console, and you put it in reverse. You put it in trailer mode, and then you actually use the knob to steer. So if you want the trailer to go, and it goes back to kind of normal steering. So if you want the trailer to go to the right, you turn the knob to the right. If you want the trailer to go to the left, you turn the knob to the left.
Which does make it a little bit more and then the truck does what it's supposed to do. So, but
and you just see the steering wheel spinning around.
It still breaks my brain because I'm turning to the right, but the vehicle is going to the left, and my brain is like, you're doing something wrong. It's not going the way you're turning it to go. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I have this weird disconnect. My brain's like, if you turn right, you should feel yourself going right. Nope, you turn right, but you feel yourself going left. It's like, wait, am I doing the correct thing here? It makes it easier, but I find backing up with the trailer is so difficult.
Yeah. It even with the backup assist, it still takes a little practice to figure out, okay, how much do I need to turn this for how far I want to go?
Mm-hmm.
But you have your backup cameras, so you can see where the trailer is going, and it's easier but not easy.
Mm-hmm. I guess that's the way to say it. It is easier, but it's still not easy. I still think backing up with the trailer takes practice.
A lot of practice.
I remember talking to someone who does tows trailers all the time for horses. And they said, after all the years of still doing it, years and years of backing up with the trailer, he still gets nervous when he's someplace. He's like, oh, here's where I screwed up. And it's still disconcerting. You're in front of all these people. It's like, as if you've never done it before. And he's like, I've done this so many times, I can't even tell you. And still every now and then it's like, nope, that wasn't even close to what I was going for.
So after we messed around with that for a little while, then we got to head out on the road, grab one of the new Rangers and go out on the road for a couple of hours. What did you think of the new Ranger?
Overall, the new Ranger I think it's good. It didn't feel like dramatic changes. It's not this dramatically change. It's the Raptor's dramatically different. The Ranger itself is not. But it's great. I mean, I like the Ranger before. I like the Ranger a little more now. I don't know. It was funny. I really wish sometimes they have competitive cars for you just to drive. Like we had the Tacoma to drive, but just on that time in the parking lot to do the trailer experiment. I would love to just really drive the Ranger, hop out and hop in a Tacoma to see how different they are really back to back.
Well, I had driven the Tacoma just a couple of weeks ago, so I had fairly recent memory of it.
And
while the Tacoma is a huge improvement on the previous generation Tacoma, I actually like the Ranger better.
You do? What made you say Ranger over Tacoma?
Well, one big thing is just usability. Probably the weakest aspect of the Tacoma is the back seat room or lack thereof.
That's true.
The back seat in the Tacoma is very tight. And in the Ranger, it's not, you get in the back seat of a crew cab F-150 or a Super Duty, and these things are enormous. It's like riding in the back of a limo.
Yeah.
This is not like that, but it is way more usable than the back seat of the Tacoma.
That's true. I mean, for that alone, you're right, because you technically have a back seat in the Tacoma, but it's really tight. You're not going to be comfortable back there. You could genuinely ride in the back seat of the Ranger for a lengthy time and be perfectly comfortable. So that's a big difference. So yeah, from that point of view, 100%, I would give it to Ranger. And
then the other thing is just the interior in general of the new Ranger. The previous generation Ranger, even though it only went on sale in the US in 2019, that Ranger actually debuted globally back in 2011.
Right. So it was new to us. but not new.
Yeah, and it felt it. I mean, you sat in it, and the interior felt dated, and it also felt kind of cheap. It was hard plastics, did not look, because it was designed for other markets where price is more of a concern, and it never felt particularly modern or even remotely premium. And I remember the first time I drove the previous gen Ranger, it was probably in about 2019 or 2020.
Yeah.
It was a Lariat. And, at the time, this was the high end of the Ranger lineup. It was about $44,000.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, for a truck that costs over $40,000, this feels really cheap.
It was too much money for what it was.
Yeah. Now, and I remember writing at the time, that an XL or an XLT with this interior, it'd be fine. I'd have no issue with it, in the low, upper 20s, low $30,000, up to maybe $33,000. It'd be okay. But for, what was supposed to be a premium trim level, it did not feel up to the task. Yeah. The new one, certainly in the XLT, it's still mostly hard plastics, but it looks a lot nicer. The graining on the plastics is a lot nicer. It's kind of like
the fabric seats. Actually, I thought were a lot nicer. Weird thing, but it has like it has a texture-y. It's like it's not just this flat fabric, and then there's a pattern to it that's sort of raised to give it extra little pop and visual appeal. I think my only criticism, and actually everybody said this online, they were cream, sort of like a cream colored version of these seats than the one that I had. And it was like, who wants cream colored anything inside of a truck? It's going to get so dirty, but okay, pick a different color.
But so the interior is a lot nicer. And then in a Lariat, it's nicer still, it's got more soft touch surfaces on there. So we drove a Lariat back into town to the hotel and drove an XLT for the longer drive route. And I was really impressed with it, and right now, the standard Rangers, the only engine that's available is the 2.3 liter 4-cylinder EcoBoost, which is 270 horsepower, 310. So this is carryover from what we had in the previous Ranger. And it's the same engine they use in the Mustang EcoBoost, and it's the base engine in the Bronco, and a bunch of other vehicles. It's a good solid engine, makes plenty of power, no issues with it. I was a little surprised, to look down at the cluster, and it was reporting 24 miles per gallon. I'll be curious, when I actually get my hands on one, and run it through my normal drive loop to see what it actually does. But certainly the EPA fuel economy numbers on the Ranger are much better than before. So it's, it should, it's I think it's a good solid package. With that 2.3, and then sometime later this summer, they're going to add the 2.7 liter V6 that is the base engine in the F-150 as an option on this one. That'll be 315 horsepower, 400 foot-pounds of torque.
Right.
So I like the standard Ranger. I think it's a really good mid-sized truck.
Yeah, I think it's solid. I really do think it's a good choice, and I think it's. I mean, I like I said, I like the old one before, but your criticisms of it being a little too basic, like the interior trims, which honestly, if I'm going to be totally honest, I have that criticism of a lot of Ford's vehicles, especially in their lower trims. Sometimes Ford does well, and other times they'll have great tech and they'll have great features and do all these things. You're like, but why does it look like the interior of a car from 15 years ago? They just don't do good at knowing when to weed out plastics or to just change the look of plastics. I do feel like they did a better job in this one.
Yeah. And the infotainment system, standard 10-inch portrait style touchscreen, optional 12-inch. And it's got the same interface you find on the 15-inch system that's in the Mach-E and the F-150s and some other vehicles now. But without the glued on knob on there.
Yay.
And you know what else?
Yes.
You can reach out and grab the vents and move the vents.
Woohoo! Again, you can actually move the vents.
At dinner, I was telling Mike Levine and the chief engineer, it's like, nice job on the vents, guys. You should go have a chat with the folks over on the Nautilus team.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
And it turns out they weren't even aware of what the Nautilus guys are done with the vents because
No
they
kidding.
haven't had a chance to drive it yet.
Really?
Yeah.
They didn't
So-
know they did. Oh, it's funny because you think in your head that it's all the same company, like Ford and Lincoln, they're the same, but they're like two completely different.
Well, oftentimes, inside these companies, even, different product teams, even like within Ford, like, the F-150 people don't necessarily know what the Ranger people are doing versus the
Yeah.
Bronco and Escape and whatever. So yeah, they hadn't had a chance to try out the Nautilus yet. And so they weren't aware of that issue. So if anybody from Lincoln is listening, please go talk to your colleagues over on the Ranger team.
They did a lovely job.
Learn how you should design the interior vents.
Oh, God.
Anyway, so that's the regular Ranger. Next morning, we got to spend a few hours with the Ranger Raptor. What'd you think of the Raptor?
Oh, it's so much fun. Okay, so I feel like this about any Raptor, and I say with this with all the love in the world, it's the stupidest thing. Nobody needs this, but oh my gosh, do you want it? It's over the top. What I really love about the Ranger version though is as cool as the Raptor is for going high speed in the desert and off-roading, and you can jump it and you can do all these cool things. The thing that makes the F-150 more challenging is that in everyday use, the thing is the size of a tank. It's so big. It's very hard to use in day to day. Looks amazing. People will get out of your way because they're afraid of you, but it is just really, really big. Even
You
for
don't want to drive one in a city.
Yeah, you do not want to take one in the city. The Ranger Raptor, you could take that in a city. You can easily park that in a parking lot, even though it's bigger because the truck is smaller to begin with. Once you Raptorize it, it's still a very manageable truck. So I think it's a great option for someone who wants all the fun of the F-150 Raptor, but it's like, I don't want that much truck. Now you have the Ranger Raptor. And I think I loved it. I thought it was absolutely a hoot to drive. Brilliant driving on those sloppy courses. I don't know what it was like the day that you were there, Sam, but we had rain. So everything was ever so slightly muddy. Was it muddy for you?
It was not muddy for us. The rain, some rain and snow came later that afternoon after we left.
Okay.
So it was pretty dry for us. So it was also a lot of fun. We had two different there was a basic handling course that they had us go through in normal off-road and then Baja mode.
Mhm.
So, with several different corners and different braking spots, just so we could get a feel for the difference in, one of the things they changed in those drive modes is the slip thresholds for things like the traction control and, the ABS and so on. So they wanted us to get a feel for the differences in the different drive modes on the shorter course. And then we went on the longer Baja course where we just stayed in Baja mode. And that's where it got really fun. And I was I was in the second group of drivers. I was driving with our friend Perry Stern, and Perry went first. And so by the time the first group went through, the course, was the dirt was getting a little looser, a little more silty, which made it even more fun. Because when you put it in Baja mode, you can really get it sliding around and get it to drift a little bit. If you're braking right, and if you're because one of the things you got to do when you're off-roading high speed like that is you want to go into corners slow and out fast. So you want to try and do almost all your braking in a straight line.
Mm-hmm.
But what you don't want to do to get through those corners the fastest is you don't want to just like go completely off the brake as you turn. You actually want to do some trail braking. So you get on the brakes, do your slowing down in a straight line. And then as you go into the corner and through the corner, then you're gradually easing off the brake pedal. Because what that'll do is keeps more weight on the front end, on the front wheels. So it'll actually steers better. Because otherwise, if you just lift off the brake pedal, it just understeers right off the course.
Right. So we'd had a little bit of snow. We actually had light dusting of snow even as we were driving out to that course. So everything was a little snowy. So it wasn't deep snow, but it was enough that as the sun came up, it melted and we just had a little bit of a mess. It was so muddy. So it's silt, and silt is its own unique kind of thing when it turns to mud. Standing outside in it, first of all, I nearly face planted a half a dozen times because it's so slippery, but it was sticking so much to my boots that my boots felt heavy. It was like walking around with weights on my ankles because the mud just like cakes upon itself. But we were driving, you could get it up to speed, but probably not as fast as you guys could because it was really slick. It was genuinely slippery on that course, but it was neat and they gave you a different like idea. Like, how is this going to handle in slippery, wet, muddy conditions? Not deep mud, but enough mud that it got really slick. And it was super fun. Let the tail go out a little bit. I found it very easy to drive. And, you do that first loop around the course and kind of trying to get a feel for it because you don't know quite how much it's going to get away from you. And you think, oh no, it's not really going to get away from me that much. It's very controlled. It was very easy to drive, even without all that horsepower, even with the course conditions. Where they kept saying, just try to find a place that's not too muddy, like stay out, try not to make it all ruts, try to, be responsible grown-ups and not destroy everything out there because there were more waves of media and more people coming through. I thought it was really fun. I wished it had been drier so I could have pushed it a little bit harder. But for fear of being the one who goes off the course and skittering off into the brush, I thought, nope, I'm only going to push it so hard. But you could tell even if you're holding back a little bit, even if you were cautious, gosh, the thing it did exactly what it's supposed to do. It was such an easy truck to drive. And when they let us do the little jump at the end there, it's who doesn't like jumping a truck? Who doesn't enjoy this? Like and they're asking people, and it was funny though. Hey, first time jumping a truck? I'm like, no. No, it's not. Oh, okay. I'm like, I hope you're saying that to everyone. It is not the first time I've jumped a truck, but thank you very much.
Yeah, they did have us, put on helmets and a hands device as we were doing both the handling stuff and the jump. That was a lot of fun. And the differences between the regular Ranger and the Raptor, they had a Raptor version of the previous generation that they never sold in North America. It was only overseas.
Right.
So this is the first time we're getting the Ranger Raptor. So like the F-150, it's got the flared out fenders front and back. So it's about 3.5 inches wider. It's lifted. It's about 10.7 inches of ground clearance. So this is not, this is not, it's primarily like the other Raptors, it's primarily like for high speed desert running, high speed off-roading, as opposed to, the really hardcore off-roading, like, what you would do with a Wrangler Rubicon.
Right.
But 10.7 inches of ground clearance is a lot. Good approach and departure angles. And then it's got the Fox live valve shocks like the F-150 and the Bronco Raptor. The engine is the same 3-liter EcoBoost that you get in the Bronco Raptor, 405 horsepower, 430 foot-pounds of torque. It's a strong engine, but interestingly, like when we were driving it, particularly on road, it doesn't feel like the truck doesn't feel all that fast. And I realized when I looked at the weight, the curb weight of the Ranger Raptor, because you've got all this extra stuff plus the skid plates. There's 4 skid plates on the bottom to protect the transfer case and the fuel tank and the engine and other stuff. This thing weighs 5,325 pounds.
Oof. Which
would explain why it doesn't quite feel as fast as you might think a 400 horsepower twin turbo V6 would feel.
Yep.
It's not that it's slow, but it's not quite what you expect given the numbers until you realize how heavy. And, this is fairly typical of off-road vehicles. When you put that armor on there and you start lifting it, you get 33-inch Bridgestone KO3 all-terrain tires, all that stuff adds a lot of weight.
All that weight impacts how fast a car of any vehicle is going to feel. No matter how powerful the engine, if the thing has a lot of weight on it, that makes a difference. So like what was it? The Hellcat or the Demon, one of those, you can even get like a rear seat delete for people who really wanted to go fast. Get it without the rear seat because even just the seats, which are heavy, but not, take those out. Your performance improves. Like any bit of weight that you remove makes a car a little bit better in terms of performance.
And just for comparison, the regular Ranger 4x4, 4,415 pounds. So almost 900 pounds.
That's a big difference. That's a huge difference. So now I have a question for you. So we mentioned the Bronco Raptor, the Ranger Raptor, and the F-150 Raptor. Which Raptor? Which flavor of Raptor would you choose, Sam?
I would probably go with the Ranger.
You would?
Yeah.
So that would be my pick too.
Yeah.
Like the Ranger.
I like the utility, of a midsize pickup. It doesn't feel huge, and in fact aside from the width, the new Ranger is actually, the wheelbase is a couple inches longer, but the overall length is actually about 2 inches less, or sorry, not 2 inches, about half an inch less. So ever so slightly less. So it's not long. It's not longer than the old Ranger. The Ranger Raptor is obviously wider, but so it's a decent size. And if I had to pick one of the three Raptors, I would probably go with the Ranger.
Yeah, me too. I think the Ranger is a little bit of truck, a little bit of everything. Bronco is just so off-roady with its, removable everything. You don't always want that. F-150 is big. So it's just right.
Yeah. And, it's also not crazy expensive. I mean, it's not cheap, but, the Ranger Raptor, $55,470. And, I don't think Toyota has officially set pricing on the Tacoma TRD Pro, but, the guys at the TFL have been saying it's going to be somewhere in the mid 60s, like 65.
Probably.
So, you might want to consider the Ranger as an alternative. And then also if you buy any Raptor, if you buy any Raptor pickup, if you buy an F-150 or a Ranger Raptor, they include a day at the Raptor Assault Driving School, which is where we were doing this stuff.
Right. So if you buy one of these, you're going to get to experience the courses and a little bit more even, because I think we got like an abbreviated version of everything. You have to get yourself out there. You have to handle your travel and lodging. They get you some food. They feed you. But you will have a chance to do with these professional instructors what we did, which is honestly a great thing to take advantage of if you can afford to get yourself to Utah. Because,
to be fair, if you can afford $56,000 for a Ranger Raptor, you could probably afford a ticket to Utah.
Right. So it's probably not outrageous to think that you're going to be able to afford it. It's really worth it because you learn so much. And I say, even if you're someone who is a more veteran off-roader and you feel like you know everything, you don't know everything. You're going to learn something because once you're there, the instructors, they're going to be able to see how good you are. They're going to know that you're a novice, or they're going to know that you kind of know what you're doing, and they're going to tailor what they tell you accordingly. So they're not going to tell you basics that, oh, wait, she's got this, when they know that you're a veteran, but they're not going to start with really complicated stuff if you're a novice. So it's a great way to learn how to get comfortable with your truck in a more controlled environment with people who can really teach you how to drive it.
And I think a really important thing is they will also teach you how to use all the various features and capabilities the truck has. Because, there's a lot of different drive modes. There's a lot of, like the Raptor's got locking front and rear differentials, so they'll take you through, here's where you should use that stuff. The Ranger Raptor doesn't have, a sway bar disconnect like you have on the Bronco Raptor.
Right.
The Bronco Raptor is a little more, rock crawling style. But they'll teach you all the features that are on there. And that, like I said, a full day of that is included when you buy a Raptor pickup. And if you buy the Bronco Raptor, you get a day at one of the Bronco off-rodeo courses.
Yeah, which is cool. Take advantage of that stuff, people, if you buy these kinds of vehicles.
Yeah, you might as well. I mean, you're paying a bunch of money for these vehicles. You might as well take advantage of the stuff they offer with it. Okay, let's see. Last couple of days, the New York Auto Show is coming up this week. I won't be there. Are you going?
No, I am not, because I do not need to cover that. We have someone else at New York Auto Show. I get to go play with Jeeps in Utah instead.
Okay. So we've seen there's actually a surprising number of new vehicles being unveiled at the New York Auto Show. And if I'd known about these earlier, I might have made arrangements to try and get there, but they kept it a secret. So in the last couple of days, Infiniti has rolled out the new QX80,
Right.
which is their full-size luxury SUV. I actually saw this thing last October when I was in Japan. They showed it to us. They gave us a preview of it at the design center, and we got to crawl around it a little bit. But this is the big guy. What do you think of the new QX80?
I think it looks good. I haven't seen it in person. I've only seen it in pictures.
Did you see the QX80 monograph concept last year?
I'm trying to remember if I did. I'm not recollecting whether I did or not. But I think what they've done, the changes are nice. I think they've, it was feeling so long in the tooth. It really needed some attention. It was looking dated. So I think the changes they made are really good. It's much more, it looks more slick. It looks impressive. It looks like the halo vehicle that Infiniti intends it to be now. I think they probably are going to have a pretty good response to this. That big luxury SUV has such a solid market. There's people who want their big SUV for their families. They want it to be luxurious. It's a neat segment. They're always introducing vehicles with new bells and whistles. And I think what they did with this, at first glance, it looks like it's going to be a good call. And I think it'll do well for Infiniti. What was your first impression of this, Sam?
Yeah, it's set visually. It's set a little more apart from the Nissan Armada, and also the version of this that's sold globally is called the Nissan Patrol. And then the Patrol is badged as the Armada in North America, and then there's the QX80. And so, the previous QX80, started to step away from the Armada a little bit visually. This one goes further, especially in the interior. The interior is really dramatically different.
Beautiful.
Yeah, you've got big screens there, flowing lines. I think it's a really fantastic. It looks much more premium than the previous generation did. It looks more like a luxury SUV.
I would agree. But it has pricing that is incredibly premium too. It starts at, for the base trim with rear-wheel drive, $82,000. The top autograph with four-wheel drive is $110,000.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that that's that much more than the old one was.
Is that?
Yeah, I think the old one started around 80 as well.
So it keeps the same, but like 110 is a lot.
Yeah. And this gets the new infotainment system that Nissan and Infiniti are using, which is now an Android automotive based system, like what many other automakers are doing. So it's got Google services built in. It's got their own unique interface on it, but it's the Android system underneath. So you get Google Play Store, Google Assistant, Google Maps. You can download apps right onto the vehicle and run those on there. If you have a Google account, you can just log in and it'll sync up all your favorites and everything. So it's nice in that respect. And then the other big change is the old 5.6 liter Endurance V8 is gone. Now been replaced by a new twin turbo 3.5 liter V6, which sounds vaguely familiar. I mean, but almost everybody's
doing this now. But it's still 450 horsepower, 516 pound-feet of torque. It's no slouch, and 9-speed automatic. I mean, it should be good. It should, it's all going to depend that whole, like we talked about, the weight to the power to see how it does. There's, I can't imagine they would have made it lackluster.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it'll be just fine. I have no concerns there.
Yeah.
So that is coming later this summer.
Can I just say they have the puddle lights? I don't know if you looked at the image, how sometimes outside the door, it'll show you, like, it'll say Infiniti or maybe just the Infiniti logo. I don't know if you looked, but the actual image, it looks like wings. It's so cool. It kind of mimics what's on the sort of lines that are on the dashboard lights, but it extends all the way from where the front door closes all the way back to the rear of the vehicle. Whoosh, like it looks pretty cool. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I agree with what you said about the puddle lights, and it also has the hidden door handles that recess into the door panels, so it looks smooth and seamless. Those are always questionable, because sometimes they they don't come out when they're supposed to, or
Correct.
if the car's been sitting in an ice storm, then you've got to try and scrape that off without scraping the paint.
Well, just this morning, I'm driving I have a Honda Ridgeline that just arrived, and we had snow and ice. Yeah, I get it. It's March 23rd. We had snow and ice. I couldn't get the door open this morning. I had to use my ice scraper to sort of chip away at the ice that was on top of it, and sort of smack the door handle a couple of times with my hand before it finally wanted to release. So even like a regular door handle, sometimes you have a battle with. So yeah, these recessed ones are a little bit more of a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, it looks slick, but
Looks beautiful.
It can cause problems.
Yeah.
All right. From the other side of the company, Nissan also unveiled second generation Kicks, which I think we've been fans of the Kicks since it launched a few years back. It's not an exciting car, but
no,
really good solid basic transportation.
Yeah.
Small crossover.
When we were getting my daughter her first vehicle, the only reason the Kicks wasn't on our list is a reason that they have fixed. It was
the lack of all-wheel drive.
All-wheel drive, and they have added all-wheel drive, and I thought, oh, this would add that to my list now.
Yeah, and this looks, I think looks a lot better than the first generation Kicks. The front end is kind of an interesting look to it. The way the lights are done and the grille, it's a slightly more aggressive looking, a little more blocky looking, but the whole thing looks a little more muscular than before.
It didn't have a lot of presence before. It was a little bit modest, a little bit on the design. It was attractive, but there was nothing striking about it. This is a little bit more presence, and I think they did a good job with it. I think people are going to like the look of this, and that'll help it.
Yeah. You have, like you mentioned, all-wheel drive available now, and also a 2-liter engine instead of the 1.6-liter that was there before. So a little more performance than previously, and available dual 12.3-inch displays on the dashboard, and let's see, the infotainment system with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Yeah, we'll be seeing a lot more of this in the coming months, I think, once we get a chance to drive it.
This will do a lot. The changes they made, I think the Kicks needed. I think it was fine for what it was, but it fell short of some comparable vehicles. I think by them doing the changes they did on the tech front, giving a little more space, more powerful engine, and that all-wheel drive, a lot more people are going to consider this that would not have considered it before.
Yeah, I think the big question is, how much is the price going to go up?
Yeah, they haven't said anything about pricing, right?
Yeah, because when the Kicks launched, it was like $18,000, and I think even now it's like 19.5 as a starting point.
So if it gets expensive, but you can still get it with front wheel drive. So if you don't want to pay for the all-wheel drive, you don't have to. But you wonder with the available, those touch screens and some of the things they have in there, is it going to get too expensive? I feel like they're going to have to keep it affordable, or I don't know. I just feel like please keep it affordable. I think if they modest price increase, Nissan, don't go crazy.
Yeah, I just looked it up. The current the 2024 Kicks S starts at $21,050. So it's actually gone up quite a bit. But they've also added a bunch of ADAS features and things like that.
Right.
So hopefully, if they keep it no more than 22 starting price for the new one with front wheel drive, then that would keep it competitive with things like the Chevy Trax and some other ones out there.
Absolutely.
All right. And then last new one that's going to be showing up in New York this week is the Kia K4. And I was not really expecting this one, because I think there's been some reports that the Kia Forte was going away.
Yes.
And it sounded like Kia might finally abandon the small car segment.
Yeah.
But the Forte is in fact going away, but it's being replaced by the K4.
The K4 looks good. It looks very much, and I mean, it's a sedan. Is it a sedan or a hatchback? It's a straight up sedan.
It's a sedan, I think.
I had a brain cramp there for a second. I'm like, wait, it almost looks like a hatchback design in the back, but it is a sedan. But the front, the lighting and the way they've done the grille, it looks very EV9 to me. You can see the evolution of the EV9. That design language has played into what they have for the K4. And
that front also, what we saw with the refresh on the K5 in Chicago, similar concept there, like with the lighting, the front lighting. And then the overall shape of this thing. Do you remember the EV4 concept that we saw in LA?
Oh yeah.
This very much like the C-pillar area is the only thing that's really changed much from that EV4
Mhm.
concept. But like the fenders, the shape of the fenders and everything is almost directly from that EV4 concept.
Yeah.
So I think it's a sharp looking car. And let's see if they have any other details on it here. I don't think they
This was kind of deep
provide.
light. It's set to make its
Yeah,
official debut on March 27th, so I'm betting um we'll have more details in a couple of days, is what I'm
yeah, yeah. No powertrain details or anything on this
saying.
yet. But we'll have more to talk about this on this next week, I think.
Yeah.
Plus, there's also going to be some news from Hyundai as well at the show. So, and Genesis, I think, is also going to announce something.
I
So there's
believe
actually
so.
surprising amount of news coming out of the New
There's a
York
little
Auto
bit of
Show.
but it's funny. It's still a very scaled down New York Auto Show. I remember
Mhm.
doing 2 solid days of New York Auto Show once upon a time,
Yeah,
and and it's really like a half day of press conferences.
yeah. And then final story I wanted to talk about is GM. Last week, I think we talked when you weren't here. We talked about report came out of the New York Times about GM sharing driver data with data brokers like LexisNexis.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned at the time, GM is not alone in doing this. There's
Yeah.
actually a lot of automakers, probably most automakers are doing some degree of this now. Usually as part of programs they're doing for insurance, for usage-based insurance, so that if to show if looking at how you drive, where you drive, and trying to do better risk modeling. So if you're a safer driver, theoretically you can get lower premiums. If your behavior is a little more risky, premiums can go up. Well, after a lot of backlash, GM announced yesterday that they will stop sharing driver data with brokers effective immediately. I'm sure that they are already looking at other alternatives and how to do this. But we'll see. But for now, at least GM has stopped. And we'll see if if any other automakers like Hyundai and Kia follow suit and do that, because I know that they also share some data with some of these data brokers, and most automakers do to varying degrees.
Yeah. I think knowing, excuse me, knowing that it's like, oh, my data was shared and now my insurance is unaffordable, that had to really be a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people. So I'm not surprised that GM's like, whoops, our bad. We'll stop
Yeah.
doing that.
So I mentioned previously that I was at Nvidia GTC in San Jose this week. While I was there, I got a chance to speak with Alwin Bakennes, who is the head of software engineering at Volvo.
Mhm.
And we had a real interesting discussion. And we actually did this interview while sitting inside a Volvo EX90.
Oh, cool.
So the EX90 is the new 3-row electric SUV that's coming from Volvo. It's actually going on sale in sometime later in Q2, so this spring, and followed within a couple of months after that by the Polestar 3, which is on the same platform, but it's a slightly smaller 2-row. But anyway, Alwin and I had an interesting discussion about how things are evolving with Volvo in terms of doing automotive software. But and so we did it in the EX90, in part because it is so quiet in there. We were on the show floor at GTC, all these booths, a lot of
Right.
people milling about. It was quite loud on the show floor. But as soon as we got in the car and closed the doors,
Silence.
it's like, wow, this is impressive. So we had a good discussion about that. I'll drop that in here, and then we'll come right back to answer a couple of listener emails.
Biggest Volvo we've ever made.
I don't think that was in our talking points, but if we can add it.
There's a fun thing about this. I don't know. Are you an audio fan?
To the degree that my ears can still tolerate audio. I mean, I've been to I went to so many concerts when I was younger that I have so much tinnitus that I can't truly appreciate the greatest audio. But I do love it. Yeah.
The high-end attenuation is great now. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry.
Well, it is quiet, the cabin, like very little road noise, etc. And it has a fantastic audio system, just so you know.
Well, I'm
should try it.
looking forward to experiencing it in the not too distant future.
Right.
All right, so let's talk about software and Volvo. Back, what was it, 2021 or 22? Volvo had a big technology day. Hakan Samuelsson came out and talked about, Volvo being, going forward was going to be doing most of its software in-house. You are leading that effort at Volvo. Talk a little bit about the approach and how Volvo's software organization has evolved over the last several years, and from where it was and from the traditional approach of doing software, deeply embedded software, to what you're doing today and where you want to take it in the future.
That's a small question.
Yeah,
to start with.
Yeah, just a little quick overview. Yeah.
All right. So, I think the thing to keep in mind is that we're trying to be very intentional about what we do ourselves and where we work with partners and what we don't do, right? Setting a goal to develop everything in-house, I think, is maybe not the ideal thing to do, to be perfectly blunt. What is important for us is, again, back to our core purpose. We want to build safe products, we want to build sustainable products, and we want to build products that make your life easier and better. And for that, if you extract that to what it means for the software organization, is the whole strategy is also around building a safe product. So it's about our ADAS strategy. It's around building the machine that enables us to actually train the models that generate the safest experience, right? So collision avoidance wise, but also when it comes to convenience functions, we want them to be safe, absolutely safe. And the next thing is about building, a fantastic customer experience. And the customer experience goes across all the touch points, of course, right? It's not just the screen. It's like every touch point. It's the mobile app. It's everything. And that, with that in mind, that's first how we built our partnerships, right? So we said, okay, well, if we're going to do in-house AI, then Nvidia is the best partner to do that with, because we get the silicon, we get the data center, we get like the developer equipment, hardware-wise, and all of the tools with that, and that helps us to be fast. So that's where we ended up with that. The second thing is that we said, okay, well, if we're going to build a fantastic customer experience, we don't believe that a customer experience revolves around us only, right? It's like the blend of Volvo DNA with a broader ecosystem, which is the really powerful part. So we very, very intently developed a partnership with Google where we jointly actually matured Android Automotive, right? So Android built in with Google. You know that we launched that first on the EX40 and the Polestar 2 at the time as well. And we really worked super close with Google on actually building the product, right? Same repos, same code base, same teams. And these are the two key partnerships that we continue to evolve with after that as well. So we still work with Google in the same way. We have a very special relationship. And of course with Nvidia, same thing. Then is like how we evolved our organization on top to build the software is that we realized that we need to be in control of the flow of the software, right? So the parts where we define behavior and the parts where we define important interfaces, we do in-house. So let me give you an example. We might not do the seat control module in-house, but everything that connects you as a driver, your profile, to the infotainment screen, your Spotify login account, your seat settings, your preferences about how you want to use the car, that we do.
Okay.
Right? So just to give you an understanding of the flavor. Organizationally speaking, we have done some changes in the sense that we now have a pure software organization that is focused on, three main streams. One is ADAS, one is like the core compute infrastructure, the core compute platform, and the other is the connectivity stack, including cloud and mobile app and these kind of things. But we run complete vehicle architecture and complete vehicle integration, so software integration across the car, just like straight through that, right? And the same thing with data analytics. So the data team, the data pipeline is also there. So everything from, again, doing like a traditional V, because we are an automotive company, from doing diagnostic specifications to making sure that we actually implement it across the system, that we can deal with the diagnostics data, leverage the data in our back end to actually, create actionable insight in terms of how the cars are doing.
So, as an organization, what has been for you the biggest challenge in evolving to a modern way of developing software? Going from where you would start with a set of requirements, develop the software that was meant for start of production, and then once you hit that drop dead date for job one, you stop working on that and you start working on the next batch for the next iteration or the next program, the next vehicle, and moving towards a continuous integration, continuous deployment kind of model. What's been your biggest challenge?
I think one of the big challenges that I think everyone will face is how you merge like a traditional program view. Like the automotive industry, it's like a very complex industrial process, right? Which has multiple thousands of integration points and it ends up into a date when these cars start to be produced in a plant, right? There's a lot of dependencies along that road. And that world, to combine it with, an agile, product-focused software stack world, that has, been hard. Where we've landed now is that we really look at it from, a superset product, which we configure to product variants that go through our CI/CD pipeline, and we really merge, the program dimension with the way of working around, the product structure. And, there's a lot of companies that, try different ways of working, like recipe solutions, like, less or safe or whatever. But you really have to find your way and make it fit to, the core of the business is really still that we build cars, right? Which is a big industrial process with billions of investment on the side, that you put into a big industrial process. So you need to make that work. And finding the sweet spot there, I think that has been one of the hardest parts.
Yeah, and we're sitting in an EX90 right now. There's a Polestar 3 behind us. These programs were delayed a bit in launch, and Volvo said it's because of software challenges, some getting the software finished. What does, can you talk a little bit about kind of what sort of challenges, to a degree you can talk about it, what were the issue, what sorts of issues did you face in trying to get to that point where you had a software product that you were comfortable in shipping to start with, that is going to be your beginning point for your evolution, your continuing evolution over the next several, the life cycle of these vehicles?
Yeah, I think you started off by asking the right question, which is like, what is the challenge in actually starting with this, right? I think we've had a number of challenges. Number one, we started this big industrial project in the middle of COVID, right? So we that clearly is a challenge in itself. Moreover, what we're doing is different than what we've done in the past, and actually it's hard, right? Because we're building safety critical systems with new ways of developing software, and we're doing many parts in-house that we had not traditionally done in-house, which is hard. But at the same time, it's like you said, when we get through, right, as we're now doing, then you have a very solid basis to iterate around.
Do you feel like you're at the point now where you have an organization and processes that can move forward, as you've launched these and be successful in continuing to deploy new capabilities, updates to software, and to roll that, from that superset you talked about, subsets of that to other programs over the next several years?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So you mentioned something yesterday, which I don't think, but there's other programs that are coming quite closely after the EX90, and they are variants of the same product. And we currently in our current cars, we have 6 OTA windows per year, basically, and that's how we deploy software to the fleet. And we intend to do the same here.
Okay.
Right? So we have the basis. We can deploy backwards and forwards in time. We have, of course, invested massively in testing the software, right? And testing the different tests and the product variants for that. You know, we opened the software test center, which you can look up, right? Which really helps us industrialize and bring efficiency to the process of large-scale testing of complete vehicle software. And that journey starts now.
And that was something interesting you mentioned last night at dinner, and I think that probably most people don't realize, is that OTA updates are actually not a new thing for Volvo. You've actually been doing it for quite some time already, and not just on infotainment systems.
No, exactly. And you know, the thing which is interesting with that, I think, is like, I asked you the question about, you know, why would you do a software-defined car? And you can do a service-oriented architecture, which is still not really a software-defined car, right? And these have been buzzwords that have been flying around. But we've been very intentional about this. We want to be able to make our safety stack better. And you know, the fact that we have fully connected cars already in the market today is for the exact same reasons of what I just mentioned. We want to build the best customer experience, which we believe we can do best with, you know, Android Automotive, which is fully connected. We have had connectivity for eCall way before that became legislation, right? Standard fitting cars, again, reusing the same connectivity pipeline. And we use it to collect data from actual incidents that happen to give our engineers even better insight into how to build the best ADAS systems. And we've done that, you know, we didn't do OTA for, you know, the sake of doing OTA. We did it for a purpose. We actually want to improve the product continuously. So it's a very deliberate investment. And the same with connectivity. These are deliberate investments because we know that they're fundamental building blocks to actually being able to leverage a software-defined car.
And earlier you mentioned, you know, that as you've gone through this, you've come to the realization that not everything needs to be done in-house. How do you make the decision about what components you do in-house or what elements of the system you do in-house versus what you rely on suppliers or partners to either have them do entirely and you integrate or to work to collaborate on?
It's not like there's like a very fixed process, right? But obviously everything starts with architecture. So we look at the product from an architectural perspective and understand, you know, where do we want to place certain pieces of functionality. So for example, you know, one of the reasons why we're building a topology which is centralized, so like a core compute architecture, is that we want to expose the capabilities of all of our sensors and actuators in a single location, which is merged with access to, you know, high bandwidth connectivity, a lot of compute power, both GPU and CPU compute, a lot of storage, so we can actually do interesting things with all those capabilities of the vehicle. So we're basically building like this very flat topology where we have, you know, where we can actually build new functionality, and that enables us, for example, to innovate and adjust and do local adaptations for, you know, just talk about energy. You know, this car is going to be vehicle to grid capable, and that also requires some software to be able to interact with whatever you have at home or your energy providers, etc. And by actually being able to centralize all of that, we can do that fairly easily.
And in terms of the centralization of the compute, you know, you've got two main computers. You've got the Nvidia Orin-based system that is running your, I guess, most of your chassis control, at least your ADAS and AD functionality. I'm not sure how much other chassis control you're doing out of that one. And then the Qualcomm Snapdragon platform that is running the infotainment. How much have you been able to move towards that centralized compute with the architecture of this platform? How many main computers do you have in this one? Is it just the two and then some zonal controllers or smaller ECUs or
This goes in generations, right? But this particular car, so we have basically three gateways to, you know, the rest of the compute architecture. So the what we call the mechatronic rim nodes. So three gateways, and then we have, in this particular car, the EX90, we have two core computers, right? One is basically taking care of ADAS and body controls and some chassis and stuff like that. And the other is focused on more deep learning perception and actually provides redundancy. So we can actually do self-driving functionality with the cars later on as well.
Are those both NVIDIA powered?
Those are both NVIDIA powered.
Okay, so you've got two NVIDIA.
So this has two NVIDIA
machines.
powered machines and one Qualcomm powered machine.
And in terms of the software architecture, are you using an abstraction layer type of architecture where you've got your underlying OS and then abstraction layers that provide APIs for all the applications, and then the application layers on top of that, or is it something
very
a little
much so?
different?
So if you look at it like visually, maybe we can send you a picture afterwards. But we have our mechatronic rim nodes, like a seat control module, right? And that has a signal-based API, which is a fairly simple and easy to specify interface. So we abstract that out. That's number one. We expose those APIs also as service-level APIs in the core computer, which is where you can do interesting things, where you can connect buttons from here to the core compute structure and actually control the seats. You can also do an app on Android to control the seats, or do seat climate, music, sound, etc., and combine all these things together. So we abstract it like that. From a software, that's like the API, the interface strategy. From a software architecture perspective, we're using a combination of Android for automotive. We're using Linux. We're using QNX for safety critical systems, and AutoSAR as well.
Okay.
Like at one time, call it, he knows what I mean. One more.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna figure. So, any final thoughts you want to share on kind of the journey that you had with taking Volvo into a new generation of software for vehicles?
That's a good question. So what we're seeing now, right, is that the speed at which we can iterate, going from, driving, either in fleet or in test cars, it doesn't really matter. Understanding the behavior of the product, adjusting it, re-simulating, testing, verifying, and deploying new software. So the iteration speed that we can have is just so good. And that is going to make us successful going forwards.
Okay.
If you compare that to the traditional way of working, it is really a paradigm shift.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Alwin.
Thank you.
All right, and we're back. So let's answer a couple of listener questions. First up from Gordon, longtime listener from the Twit universe. I'm a longtime Mopar fan. I'm currently on my third Ram truck, currently with a 2019 Ram 1500 Laramie. Question: a few Ram Truck Club fans from ramforums.com have discussed the dream of a Wagoneer variant coming to the Ram brand. Would love to have a Wagoneer SUV style with the Ram front end and interior. So, the Wagoneer is built on the Ram 1500 platform, a modified version of it, which has independent rear suspension instead of solid rear axle. But I haven't heard anything from Stellantis about the potential for a big Ram SUV. Have you heard anything?
I've heard nothing like that. I mean, that's kind of a neat idea, but I don't know that that's in the cards. I feel like Ram is pretty focused on just
trucks.
I feel like they're a truck brand. I guess they could do that. It'd be neat. It would make a great concept vehicle.
Yeah.
But I've heard nothing about that. No.
Yeah. I mean, I think, aesthetically, I think, taking the Ram 1500 look and extending that into an SUV would probably be a pretty good looking vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
But I doubt that's going to happen anytime soon. Stellantis has got a lot of other things on their plate right now.
Yeah.
They're about to launch, a bunch of EVs. They're launching the refreshed Ram 1500 right now. They've got a bunch of other vehicles coming to market in the next year. I mean, they've been a little bit of a fallow period for a couple of years, but they've got a whole bunch of stuff coming very soon. And I don't think a Ram SUV is
in the
roadmap.
I'd be shocked, honestly. Yeah.
All right. And then Mickey asks, really appreciate the podcast and the information delivered. I have a 2023 BMW i4 E35. So the E35 is the base model, slightly smaller battery, rear-wheel drive, which I really do like. It replaced a 2020 430i, and it drives, etc., like a BMW, except it's EV powered, not ICE. As I leased the vehicle, the initial cost factors were reasonable for what you get. One cost issue with EV ownership, though, is that I did not realize, and it is not publicized. I just received the renewal for my auto insurance. While the cost of insurance here in South Florida is generally high, the increase in my renewal was crazy high. When I looked at the detail invoice, I realized that the charge for my i4 was literally twice the charge for my wife's 2020 Audi Q3 S-Line. Coverage for the two vehicles is exactly the same, and yes, the Audi is a year older than the BMW, but on investigation, turns out the cost for collision and comprehensive for an EV is significantly higher than the cost of the same for an ICE vehicle. Apparently, when the insurance companies price out the insurance coverage, the high cost of repair, etc., of an EV versus the same model of an ICE vehicle takes its toll on the charges you incur. If you're getting an EV because of the cost savings in fuel, the cost of insurance might negate that advantage.
I just in general, I think when you're buying a new car, you really don't just look at what the car is going to cost you. I'd give your insurance company a call and say, what'll be my charge? Like, what would it cost to insure this car? Because depending on so many things, the zip code that you're in, how far you drive to work, like all these different factors can make your car very expensive to insure. And if you have the right or wrong kind of car again, repair costs on your car or theft rates on your car, whatever, collision rates on your car, how often people are having accidents, it can really impact your insurance rate. So definitely anytime you're looking at a new car, before you buy it, just give your insurance company a ring and say, hey, what would my insurance be if I purchase this car? And they can tell you.
Yeah. And to be fair, right now, at least, EV insurance premiums do tend to be somewhat higher than the equivalent vehicle with an internal combustion powertrain.
Yeah.
And in part, that is because, in the event of an accident, a lot of EVs, because there are still, limited number of repair facilities that know how to handle batteries and check out batteries and make sure that they haven't been damaged. They are more inclined, if there's been a collision and there's any potential risk that there's been physical damage to the battery, insurance companies are more inclined to write it off. And because of that cost associated with the battery, that impacts your insurance premiums.
Right.
Whereas the same car, like the 4 Series, Grand Coupe, the 430 is, essentially the same car as the i4, but with a gas engine. That tends to be a little more easily repairable than the battery version. And, this is not a problem unique to BMW. Tesla insurance premiums have tended to be very high for a long time. It costs a lot more to insure a Tesla than many comparable vehicles with gas engines. But yeah, that is, as you said, you should absolutely take a look, call your insurance company and say, hey, I'm thinking about buying whatever it is, whether it's an i4 or, a Bolt or, whatever, Mach-E, what is my insurance? And actually, this is something you should do regardless of what vehicle you're buying. Before you buy, call your insurance company and say, hey, what will my insurance premium be, for this car versus what I'm driving today?
And I mean, it looks like his just went up from one year to the next. So there you can be kind of stuck, but it's definitely worth, checking that out before you look at getting a car, because insurance costs can be outrageous. And then if your costs go up too much, start shopping around, because you can get sometimes a better deal. So if you feel like suddenly your rates have gone through the roof, time to sit down with your old policy and make some phone calls to find out about a new one.
And it's usually a good idea to do that at least every couple of years anyway.
Right.
Just call around a few insurance companies and get some comparison quotes, regardless of, whether you bought a new car or you're driving the same car you've been driving for 5 or 10 years.
Right.
Just, shop around a little bit, spend a couple hours, shopping around for insurance. Because often you will find that they're, that you can get a cheaper rate somewhere else.
Yeah.
And, of course, another, there are a lot of factors that go into insurance premium pricing as well. Not just the vehicle, but things like your credit rating and other where you live, where you work. I
learned that it's literally where you live down to the zip code and the street that you're on can even impact it. Like you can be in the same town and I'm, one zip code over, and your insurance rates can be significantly higher just because it loops in some areas that maybe where it's not considered as safe or something. And so there's so many factors that go into your insurance.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thanks everybody. And we will be back next week. Bye.
Bye.